Kalana Heartwale returns to the ships, having succeeded in her mission to obtain rare spell components from within the Dreadmire. Fortunately, the repairs to the damaged ship have been completed. Unfortunately, the ship remains beached until the tide comes in. So, while they wait, the reagents and the wounded are loaded onto the other ship, which then awaits the remaining elves offshore. Bellows can be heard in the distance as the Saurian tribes are roused, and the elves attempt to hasten their ship's rise from the muck. Unnecessary equipment and sailors are offloaded onto the shore in order to lighten the ship's hull, including the ship's bolt thrower. Too soon, however, the elves are forced to form up along the shore as the scouts return, reporting the first wave of Saurians rushing their beachhead. Defending the shore, we have Kalana Heartwale, the elf mage, who will be accompanied by a group of elf warriors equipped with spears, and led by a sergeant, who gets +1 to his melee rolls. Joining her is Captain Alanak Swiftsail, a noble-born elf prince. He has the wizard and high prowess upgrades, which allow him to cast spells and give his crew, a unit of elf warriors, +1 to their melee attack rolls. Also remaining on the shore are 5 Shadow Brothers, stealthy scouts, and the ship's bolt thrower, the sole armor-piercing punch remaining to the elves. The first wave of Saurians to assault the Elves' position are led by Troxak, the brutal Saurian veteran, armed with a halberd, an artifact from before memory. He leads a bodyguard of Saurian warriors, fearsome predators, and they are accompanied by 3 mighty gators and 2 units of cunning geckos, one armed with javelins, the other blowpipes, both sporting jungle toxins and camouflage paint. The rules that I'll be using for this game are Age of Fantasy by one-page rules. The basic rules are available for free from the link in the description, but I'll be using the slightly more detailed full rulebook. Let's roll to see who'll be deploying first and subsequently taking the first turn. Red for the Saurians and black for the Elves. The Saurians will be up first with a 5. The game will be a King of the Hill scenario with a single objective in the middle of the board that both sides will be fighting over. The Saurians have deployed on the left to drive the Elves from their shores, and the Elves are deployed with their backs to the water, hoping to defend long enough for the tide to come in.
Stand firm, Elves of Tor Elora.
The Elvish Shadow Brothers make a special move before the game begins due to the Scout special rule. They can move up to 12 inches, ignoring terrain, but they're only going to go about half to avoid getting too close to those Saurian warriors. The Saurian turn begins with Troxak and his Saurian warriors rushing forward 12 inches towards the Elvish camp, snarling and slavering. The Elvish bolt thrower flings a spear-sized shot towards the oncoming gators. Requiring 4+, the shot is true, and with AP 2, the gator's defense is reduced from 3+ to 5+. The bolt pierces the gator's hide, and with the deadly 3 property, it's enough to instantly drop the mighty creature. Spurred into action, the gators rush forward, eager to crush some frail elves. The Shadow Brothers creep into the woods along the flank,
Quietly, brothers.
before letting loose a hail of arrows at the Saurian warriors.
Now!
With quality 3+, 4 of the 5 arrows are true. The Saurians, however, are wary of the elf arrows, and their shields are raised in defence. A defence roll of 4+ sees 3 of the arrows blocked, but one catches a Saurian warrior in the flank, and the creature drops with blood filling its lungs. The javelin-armed geckos bound forward 12 inches, ready to neutralise the bolt thrower in their next activation. Kalana and her bodyguard of spear elves advance on the objective, their formation tight. Kalana gathers magical energies and launches a quench spell into the approaching Saurian warriors.
Sagita
Requiring a
Flamma.
4+ to successfully cast, the spell goes off and the Saurians are hammered by 6 automatic hits. Once again, the Saurians are wary of Elvish trickery and raise their shields in defence. 2 warriors fall with the magical blast, and the remainder hiss in defiance. The blowpipe-armed geckos creep to the top of the hill, where they blast poison darts towards the spear elf warriors. With a quality 5+, 2 shots go wide, and 1 bursts on an elf shield, blasting poison spores into the air. The 6 causes 3 hits due to the poison property. The elves hunker behind their shields, needing 5+, but the poison spores seep through and 3 elves drop, choking to the ground. Alanak Swiftsail and his elf warriors rush forward towards the towering gators. Alanak gathers magical energies to launch a quench spell towards the geckos, but the intimidating presence of the gators causes the spell to slip from his mind, and the casting fizzles. At the end of turn 1, both sides close in towards the objective, the elven magics and shooting causing some casualties, though not as many as they would have hoped for. And the geckos on the hill outdid themselves and battered the elven ranks. Turn 2 starts with the Saurians, as the elves were the last to activate in the previous turn, and the gators smash into the elf warriors led by Alanak. The elves countercharge and pile onto the beasts.
At them, highborn.
The gators attack with 3 dice each. Bellowing, they swing their mighty clubs towards the elves, needing 4+. The roll of a 6 gives them an additional attack due to the predator rule, but they're weary of the ominous clanking of the bolt thrower in the distance, and they only score 3 hits. The gators have AP 3, their strength making a mockery of elven shields and armour, and requiring 6s, the elves fall before the mighty swings. The elves are many though, 7 remain, and they are led by the elf prince Alanak, who gets 3 attacks. Alanak's prowess bolsters his crew, and both he and they get +1 to their melee rolls. Alanak needing 2s on the red dice, and the warriors needing 3s on the black. Swords flash. Alanak lands 3 blows, and 4 of the crew strike true. The thick hide of the gators turn the blades on a 3+, but elven edges are keen, and one of the gators falls, pierced many times, while the other is forced back, wounded. The elves got the better of that engagement, 4 wounds to 3, so the remaining gator makes a morale test. With a quality of 4+, and the fearless rule giving him a +1, the gator requires 3+ to stay in the fight. With a 5, he's just getting angrier. On the elf turn, the Shadow Brothers in the trees loose another volley towards the Saurian warriors.
Loose!
All 5 shots are on target, and overwhelmed by the magical crossfire, only 2 Saurians raise their shields in time. 3 drop to the ground, pierced by swan-feathered shafts. Under the unrelenting hail of missiles, the Saurians, now below half of their starting number, are required to make a morale test. Zach leads the unit and his quality is 3+, but he's also fearless, getting a +1 to his roll. So we're looking for a 2 or more, and a 3 is a success. He leads his remaining warriors in a charge at the spear elves, who are braced and ready for him. The elf spearmen have the phalanx rule, which means that the Saurians will have to pass a test or become impaled on the spears as they approach. Each model in the unit rolls a dice, and Zach rolls 3 because he has the tough 3 rule. A result of 1 causes 1 immediate wound. Most of the warriors knock the spears aside as they close in, but one unfortunate Saurian is run through as he approaches. Zach lays about him with a halberd, making 4 attacks, and his warriors lash out with club, fang and claw, getting 2 attacks each. Zach needs 3s, and the warriors require 4s. The Saurians fall upon the elves in an absolute fury. Their predatory instincts overtake them, as each 6 results in an additional attack. The elves' armour is no match for primal ferocity, and requiring 5s, 5 fall before the rampaging Saurians.
No!
Zach's mighty halberd has AP1 and the rending rule, and he cuts down the remaining 2 spear elves and wounds Kalana, who required 6s to defend themselves. Kalana makes a single strike back with her staff, pale and shaking from the butchery before her. Her swing goes wide, requiring a 4+. She makes a morale test, and a 4+ is a success.
But back, you
Though
beasts!
whether it's bravery or fear that holds her is unclear, as the Saurians fall back to admire their handiwork. Alanic's swift sail launches a blast of power towards the
Sagita
geckos,
Flamma.
successfully casting the quench spell now that the gator threat is lessened. The spell detonates in the centre of the group of geckos, and their flimsy shields are no match for the raw magical energies. Requiring 6s to defend, the spell leaves nothing but ruin. Pleased with the result, the captain leads his crew at the remaining gator.
Press it. It's on the run.
Having already fought this turn, the elves all require 6s to hit, and Alanic is the only one to land a blow. His thrusts are expertly placed though, and the gator's hide is pierced twice. The beast sinks to the ground, lifeblood pooling before it. The elves regather and prepare for the Saurian warriors. The geckos on the hill are the last Saurian unit to activate, and they will use the high ground to their advantage and pepper Kalana Heartwale with darts before she can cast a spell. Most of the darts scatter wildly, but one hits and delivers its deadly toxin. Kalana requires 6s to defend, and her body is racked by the poison. She falls, shaking and foaming from the mouth. The final elf unit of turn 2 is the Bolt Thrower. It turns on the spot and launches a bolt towards the Saurian warriors. The shot, however, goes wide. At the end of turn 2, that was a brutal round, with 3 units being destroyed, including Kalana Heartwale. The objective is now in the Saurians' hands, claws, and the elves will have to retake it. The Saurians act first in turn 3 as the elves finished up last turn, so Trock-Zak will be leading his Saurian warriors at the elf warriors. Trock-Zak gets 4 attacks and his warriors 6. Once again, the Saurians lash out in a fury, gaining 2 extra attacks due to the Predator rule. These elves are better prepared for this onslaught though, and many of the Saurian strikes go wide.
Half of the Saurian warriors' attacks are turned aside by elven shields, but still 2 are clubbed to the ground.
Trock-Zak lands like a storm with his halberd, cleaving through shield and flesh with ease, cutting down 3 of the elf warriors. Alanic counterattacks with his 2 remaining crew members, his prowess continuing to inspire. The elves strike with precision, but the Saurian shields and hide prove difficult to overcome, and only a single Saurian warrior falls to Alanic. The elves nevertheless force the Saurians back, and a shout from Alanic steadies their nerves with a 3+.
Steady, highborn.
Alanic activates next, and spying the crests of the geckos on the hill,
Clever.
invokes the quench spell
Sagita
once more.
Flamma.
The spell successfully completes, and once again explodes in the centre of the group of geckos, scouring the hilltop with sorcerous flame. Taking note of his missile superiority, he orders his crew to back up and open up a shot for the Bolt Thrower.
Fill them with arrows.
The Shadow Brothers creep from the trees, arrows knocked, and loose into the back of the Saurian warriors. 4 arrows strike, 2 are deflected by scale or shield, but the remaining Saurian warriors are slain. Finally, the Bolt Thrower lines up the Saurian veteran and releases, but it's wide and buries itself in the hill behind their target. At the end of turn 3, the Saurians are down to 1 model remaining, but they still control the objective. At this stage, victory for the Saurians is unlikely, but if Trock-Zak can stay alive, he can still pull out a draw. Turn 4 begins with Trock-Zak, who needs to hold the objective. If he moves away from it, one of the elven units will snipe it and the elves will win, so he must hold it and survive the storm of missile and spell coming his way. Trock-Zak backs up and waits on the objective. Can famed elven shooting carry the day? Let's find out. The Bolt Thrower starts to hail. 1 good shot will end this, but the shot is wide. The Shadow Brothers loose their volley. 3 arrows strike Trock-Zak. With a defense of 3+, all 3 are deflected by his armour and scale. Alanic's swift sail begins by channeling power and casting Quench at the sole remaining
Sagita
Saurian.
Flamma.
But his spellcasting reserves are tapped, and he cannot weave the magic.
I require more mana.
Frustrated, he leads his crew in a charge to push the veteran back. They cut and thrust from all angles, high and low, seeking Saurian flesh. Everybody lands a strike, but Troxak rolls and twists. Shield turns blade, bronze catches steel, and the veteran remains untouched. He snarls and lashes out with his halberd, talon and tooth. Fatigue sets in though, the halberd is heavy in his hands, and his strikes are slow. Each attack is wide as the elves back up. Troxak and Alanak eye each other warily, before they're interrupted by the drums and bellows inland, and the shouting of the crew on the ship. The tide is in, the ship is afloat. The Saurian veteran backs away from the elves and lets out a mighty cry, calling its fellows towards him. Their reply echoes in the hills, and the cacophony builds. The ground shakes as mighty beasts rumble towards the shore. What can Captain Swiftsail do? He shouts orders, and the elves hurry to their ship, dragging what wounded they can, though not many hearty elves remain. The boat thrower is abandoned, and the elves leap into the ship, snatching up oars. They push away from shore as a massive behemoth thunders into view, snorting and stamping, its massive horns slashing through the air. The ship surges out towards the sea, oars powered by fear and desperation. Alanak looks back as pale trees shroud the shore to catch a last glimpse of a crumpled white form, quickly swallowed in a veil of skeletal branches.
And thus concludes the expedition to the Dreadmire. And what a brutal conclusion it was. Between those Saurian warriors and elven spellcasting, units were being deleted left, right and centre. The Saurians held on to the last, and they made the elves pay dearly for their little expedition. I could not believe the dice rolls on that last turn. Kalana falling was a shame, but the little geckos had it out for her after the altercation with Brask, and she did complete her mission and redeem herself after the lackluster performance with the Dwarves. I hope you enjoyed this taster of One Page Rules Age of Fantasy. Once again, a huge thank you to Gaetano for supplying the Saurian files. Make sure you go and check out One Page Rules from the links down below. Thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you all next time. Cheers. Let's roll to find out Kalana's fate. That's probably appropriate.